We're going to go ahead and get started. Firstly. All right, the Monday, January 31, 2022 meeting of the Marquette City Commission is now called to order at 6:03 p.m. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. City Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Bonzal?
Here.
Commissioner Davis?
Here.
Commissioner Hanley?
Here.
Commissioner Hill?
Here.
Commissioner Stonehouse? Here. Mayor Pro Tem Mayor?
Here.
And Mayor Smith?
Here. All right, Commissioners, we have an agenda prepared for this evening. Do we have a motion on the agenda? Commissioner Hanley.
I would like a motion to amend the agenda. I would like to move item number 5I, municipal tractor purchase, to new item number 8, or item number 8 on new business from the consent agenda. And I would also like to add the EDA tourism grant application and letter of support to item number 10 on new business.
Number 10? Wait. So we have
Number 9.
Okay, so number 9, would you repeat the title of that?
It is EDA tourism grant application and letter of support.
Thank you, I'm just making a note. And do we have a second on that motion? Commissioner Davis,
I'll second the motion as amended.
any discussion on the agenda? All in favor, please say yes.
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 All opposed, please say no. Motion passes 7-0. I have no announcements this evening. We are moving on to boards and committees. First, we have appointments. And as a reminder, if the commission would like to make a sweeping motion to approve the appointments, they could do so. Usually we just mention the folks' names. Do we have a motion on item number 1 here? Commissioner Stonehouse?
Your Honor, a motion to appoint the folks as written.
And do we have a second? Pro Tem Mayor?
I'll second the motion, Madam Mayor.
Any discussion?
Would people happy to see them stepping forward to assist the city?
Commissioner, or Pro Tem Mayor? Any discussion?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, any additional? All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, please say no. Motion passes 7-0. Next, we've got a reappointment, 2 reappointments, actually. Do we have a motion on these reappointments? Commissioner Hill?
I move that we reappoint the persons listed on the agenda to the Downtown Development Authority and Marquette Brownfield Redevelopment Authority.
And do we have a second? Commissioner Bonzal?
I'll second that motion, Your Honor.
Any discussion, Commissioner Hill?
Glad they're stepping up and continuing.
Commissioner Bonzal?
Yep, same here, and I had the pleasure of working with Mr. Allen on the Brownfield Authority in the past, and glad he's reapplying.
Any additional discussion? All in favor, please say yes.
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 All opposed, please say no. Motion passes 7-0. Now we are on to public comment. Before we do that, I do see we've got our folks here from Waste Management. We do have a public comment session before your presentation. We are glad to have you here. Feel free to stand there or take a seat if you'd like. Okay, so public comment. Any members of the public wishing to speak may approach the podium. You've got 3 minutes to do so. Please state your name and physical address.
Margaret Brum, 404 East Magnetic Street. I'd like to address the people from Waste Management. Earlier this year, in the month of October, I had the front yard of my property at 404 East Magnetic Street dug up for well over a month while they were trying to put in a new sidewalk and new driveway. And I work nights, so I was checking my Ring camera, and when your gentleman showed up to grab the recycle baskets, I was running out saying, be careful, don't trip and fall. And they hand carried the baskets up to me and I went inside. So for the duration of that project, I came out and they put the baskets on top of my steps. So I didn't even have to go down into the mess there. And I wanted to say thank you for that. That was very customer friendly. And for the rest of it, I understand some people in town have had difficulty with the waste management situation. And some of it is weather-related with the wind pushing everything around, and some of it is human error, and I can't tell you which one is which. But I did want to start off by saying, thanks to your guys for putting the recycle baskets on top of my steps. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you making comments like that. That means a lot to us. So I'll make sure I pass it on to the drivers.
We don't normally discuss during public comment. Anyone else for public comment?
Good evening. Wes Princeton, Uroduct Brewing Company. I'm just speaking now to let you know that I'm here for agenda item number 6, and will be available to give a short background on our project that we're looking into, working on, and answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment? Seeing none, public comment is now closed. All right, now we're going to go on to our first presentation, Waste Management Update by Mark Harrick and Tom Cassio. Please let me know if I said your name wrong. Did I get it or close enough?
Perfect.
All right, well, thank you guys for being here. We really appreciate it. I know Waste Management provides a really critical service here to our residents and our business owners in the city of Marquette, and we look forward to hearing the update. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
First of all, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Tom Cassio. I'm the district manager here in Upper Peninsula. I run Marquette, Iron River, Houghton. Been working for the company for almost 30 years now. So, and then most of you guys probably know Mark.
Some people on the board don't, but I'm Mark Herrick. I live on Newberry Street in South Marquette, and I've been involved with waste management for 10, 11 years. I was the job previously before Tom, and I've moved into a UP more sales public role.
All right, so we're gonna just kind of put a little presentation. So thanks for taking the time to listen to us. So this is a public, our local number. If any residents have any issues with service, we have a local number that all residents can call. I just want to make sure everyone's aware of the number, and they can feel free to call anytime. For comments or complaints, concerns, or any kind of questions. Ariel's in the office now. She's really good, so she can address any questions you might have as far as service, or try to answer any complaints. One of the biggest complaints we've had, we've been going through and red tagging a lot of things, so this is what carts should look like. I guess proper placement. They should be within 3 feet of the road, or the curb edge as we call them, and spread 3 feet apart. The truck that picks them up's got a 3-foot arm that grabs these things, and when they're too close, sometimes they get knocked over. So it makes our night go quicker, a little bit more efficient for the guys. And then we got some things that we have tagged. Just the picture on the left is a cart put backwards. We want them spaced 3 feet apart and 3 feet like away from my mailbox. The second picture you can see this is right next to someone's mailbox. So if that arm would grab that, we have a possibility of breaking their post or something. We want to try to avoid that as much as possible. The third picture is a bunch of carts not lined up. And then the last one here is there's a bag on the ground. It's not in a WM bag. So anything on the ground outside their carts should be in a green City Marquette bag, or whatever bags right now we get available to us we can use. Here's just a couple more. With the snowbanks in wintertime, it's tough for these guys. They can't crawl snowbanks. We got to think of a safety aspect in mind too with these guys. So that's why we ask for, have it as close to the curb as possible. Some of these pictures here, you can see that I climb a whole snowbank to try to drag a cart to the truck. So there's a bag on the left that's torn. We asked that they be tied. If this guy would happen to grab this for some reason, the bag would tear, and then we got a mess in someone's front yard. Second picture, you can see the bags up along the fence there. They're in the right color bag, but they're probably 10 feet from the road. And then the one to the right, you can see the snowbank. The guy would have to try to climb up that snowbank to get these bags. So here's some recycling on top. The next picture over is all this cardboard. Everything should be inside of a hard wall container or inside City of Marquette cart. Plastic bags. So a lot of people used to put their recycling inside bags. We asked that it's put in loose. There's a couple places here you can recycle the bags. We just don't want them, your recycling put inside it. The picture on the far right is the city of Marquette County MRF. That's what happens when stuff's bagged. This is a process. They got to shut this line down. It takes about an hour. So not only it's the inconvenience for the county, but it costs them a lot of money. That's why we tag stuff for being bagged. But there is a resource for the residents here to bring their bags. Meijer, Walmart, and I think Menards has a place for that type of plastic bag. And the biggest thing why we do this stuff, guys, is safety. When I came here in August of 20, we had 5 accidents and 4 guys, 4 injuries in 2020. You guys know how expensive injuries are. Workman's comp, $750 a day. Last year, we went the whole year, we had 1 accident, no injuries. So it keeps the city safer, keeps my guys safer. They get to go home to their families. Glass, this is a big subject. So we started doing this curbside, and what happened is we couldn't get the glass completely separated. People would take the time, separate it, and then there'd people in the yellow cart that had it mixed. So what we did was went to a drop-off center. We have one in our yard, one over by front of the DPW there on Wright Street, and then we have one over on Pioneer Road. People can bring their glass to these places and drop it off separately. This is the recycling center at Marquette County. I asked Brad Austin out there if he could just give me a couple slides what he does with it, how he processes it. First picture you can see on the left is one of the roll-offs being dumped with glass. The second picture, the blue machine there, is when they load the glass into this thing. It then falls into a pile, and then the glass in his hand is actually after it went through the crusher. They're using this stuff for landscaping, you guys, so that's pictures of the recycled glass. They're also a partner with Michigan Tech. We're looking to use this crushed glass inside of asphalt. So they're trying to come up with a resource for it. It should be available spring of 22, staying on the glass subject. Brad said it could be available at a public depending on how much they have on hand. So if anyone would be interested in doing something like this with the recycled glass, we'd have to call Marquette County Landfill, find out the availability on it. Every Monday, Mark, myself, Scott, Lindsay, and Ariel in the office, we have a meeting every Monday. Why do we do this? Is to make sure our communications between the service we provide to City of Marquette, everybody's on the same page. So we discuss service issues, we discuss a lot of things, but since we started doing that, I think it cleared up a lot of, didn't leave as many questions, so a lot of things got answered. We deal with complaints every week. We talk what happens, what we did good, what didn't we do good. So we've been sending out, part of our discussion was we need to educate the residents in Marquette. So we've been sending flyers out. We're in the second one. I think the second one now. Just kind of getting back to the basics of recycling, education letters, how we should have it out. I think that's helping. In fact, I know it's helping. Try to explain the red tag a little bit to them, why we're doing it. This is a non-collection notice, so when our guys don't pick something up, if something's put out incorrectly, this is the tag we stick on whatever it is. The left side is just kind of blown up. You can see kind of what some of the things we tag things for. This was another thing we kind of sent out to everybody. Let's get back to the basics of recycling. Things change all the time. What we recycled 5 years ago may not have a market right now. So we're working with Marquette County Landfill, how they want the stuff brought into them. And that's why we're tagging things for change. And we're putting these education letters out for everybody. This is one of the letters we had drafted and sent out to all the residents. I can't remember if it was this month or last month. That's pretty much it. So just explaining, kind of having your cards 3 feet apart. And if any questions, we have the local number in there somebody can call. That's pretty much about it. You got anything more?
No, I think you've done a good job. I mean, basically, we really, the guys that are doing the job have now been in the job for about a year. We had people that were 30 years doing the job until about a year and a half ago. So there was that, a little bit of a changeover and learning. Now they take a lot of pride in what they do. I think they're doing good. I think they're in a good groove. And well, that's about all I can say. I think, how many complaints are we servicing a week? I guess opportunities to get better.
Some weeks we have none, some week we have 5 to 10, it all depends.
Yeah, it depends on if there's a night of the wind blowing. I think there's a letter in the editor right now where must have been a blizzard day or something, some stuff blew down 3rd Street. That's frustrating. You know, I've coached residents and my own neighbors, like, hey, it's gonna blow like crazy tonight, and your little gallon pail, it's got paper sticked up, it's not gonna make it through the night. And usually they like to argue, I'm like, well, I pick up your stuff every day when I walk outside with my cart. So it's just education, and hopefully we keep trying to get better. We don't want to throw recycling and garbage all over the place. So thanks for your understanding as we work through it. And please keep calling that number. We talk about it every Monday at 2 o'clock between the two operational specialists that we have. Thank you.
And then one more thing comment I got, you know, is the city of Marquette, you guys are our customers. Our job is to pick your stuff up. Just trying to work together to find that they could, you know, put the stuff out the proper way. I mean, our job is to pick the stuff up. So I tell these guys that, you know, if they're our customer, you guys, your paycheck draws from the city of Marquette. So in any end, we got to do a good job for you guys. So we're trying to do that. I know we work through issues from time to time. But I think we got stuff pretty much figured out right now. So there's still going to be complaints coming in, but we try to take care of them on a weekly basis. Other than that, I got nothing else. Anyone got any questions, or shouldn't I have said that?
I just want to, no, I think we probably do have a few questions. I really appreciate the two of you coming in. It's the first time I've met, you know, anyone from Waste Management. I've been on the commission since 2017. So thank you guys for coming in. Thank you for working with Scott so closely. Thank you to staff for bringing in a presentation. It's nice to kind of hear directly from the source and hear maybe some of the struggles and some of the things to look forward to. And especially helps to know you had some 30-year veterans that maybe moved on and you got new people and they're doing good, and that's a big transition and understandable. Just hearing that, it's like, oh, I wish I would have known that a year and a half ago. I probably would have had more compassion, right? No, it's good. It's all, it's positive. I really, really sincerely appreciate you being here. Two things. You mentioned wind. It's supposed to be very windy tonight, so anyone listening, if it's your garbage night, lock your stuff up a little tighter. And the other thing I was going to ask is I'm looking at the pictures on page, I don't know, 5, like the snowbanks. Okay. So as someone who does put my garbage out, maybe not as well as I could now after seeing some of these pictures, what do you do if it's a snowstorm night and you know the plow's coming by?
Resident?
Do the best we
Yeah,
can.
when I'm a resident.
Do the best we can. If we see it, we try to.
Okay. I mean, right, that's all you can do, but there are nights when you're like, well, the plow hasn't come by yet, but I got to put my stuff out here. It's not on the bank, but you know there's going to be a berm in the morning.
I think the frustrating part over the years is that we always ask, please put it in the driveway. But then people's like, well, if it's in my driveway and you put it back, I might run it over in the morning or something like that. So I think that's the biggest key is put it in your driveway if you can. There's been people pretty in a lot of ingenuity of carving out a shell for them, so they're picking it up from 2 feet in the air if it's a bag. So it's just it's almost like I try to tell people I know, pretend that you're that garbage guy out there, and we're not asking for miracles or doing anything special, but just pretend like if you're the one trying to pick up that stuff, or if you've got a claw that's trying to pick up something, can they reach it? And so I think that's the biggest key.
And for the record, I think I do almost all of it right. I just don't space them.
No, that's
okay. I didn't know there needed to be a space. Okay, that's the questions I had. Again, I appreciate it. I will go down the line and see, commissioners have questions. We'll start with Pro Tem Mayor and go down the line here.
I don't think I have any questions. Just thank you for coming and presenting to us.
You're welcome.
Mr. Hill.
Thank you. I think you guys should make a video. I think you guys would be great. Honestly, with the pictures and stuff, people would listen. Seriously. So I have a single car garage. I don't know how I'm going to fit those bins in my garage with all the stuff. I've been happy with the bags. I know it's a little bit of a sore subject, and I don't know if staff need to address this or not, but we've been hearing concerns about moving to the bins from the bags, and could someone just maybe address that? Because this was incredibly informational and educational. I really, really appreciate it, but that's the only other thing that we are hearing from folks about that.
They don't want the carts, or they want to stay with the bag is what?
Yeah,
I don't know that that's a waste management discussion.
Okay,
That's
but well,
more of a city staff.
I would say, I think that Waste Management does have an opinion, though, on the carts. It is something that they talk about with increasing efficiencies. So I don't know if that's maybe more
That
of
and safety.
a question for you is.
The safety's the most important thing, I guess.
It's been talked about. I see both sides of it. I mean, if you guys look, everything nowadays is getting more automated. Your water meters went from someone walking around checking them to now automatics, so that actually cut down on injuries. So waste kind of looks at that also. But then on the other hand of it, you're trying to make the customers happy, the residents happy. So it's a constant discussion back and forth. Nothing's really been decided yet. We're talking about it, whatever's best. I mean, it's basically what you guys want, really.
And that's helpful. Actually, I didn't know that you had a concern of safety, so that's helpful to know. But the grant is more managed by city staff, and that's why I was trying to maybe redirect a little. Sorry.
But obviously, when we would go out for that grant, and when we did go out for that grant, we did consult with Waste Management, and it was something that, as they stated, is there and is creating efficiencies. Some of the other complaints that we had talked about were the issues with identifying bags on the ground in a snowstorm or when it's dark and at night and they're driving past something with a car parked there, they can't see the bags, where the bins are a little bit more obvious and apparent. And it's something that would have less risk of missing.
Yeah.
and we're not forcing people to take the bins.
This is a discussion, but it's also, all right, now bins are an option for recycling.
So they're an option. That's all. I just wanted that to be said, because
Absolutely.
we've been hearing there have been concerns that people are being forced to do something and they're not. That's what I was trying to get at.
No, nobody's forcing
Yeah, I
anybody.
guess the big thing is we bid when the last time we bid, and we gave a couple ideas, and so it really isn't our choice what you guys want to do. It's really what you guys are asking us.
And yeah, that's really not a waste management
No,
decision.
I know,
That's-
but-
For the
I know,
grant, I think that discussion still is not complete at this point.
Thank you.
Yeah. Commissioner Stonehouse?
No comments, Your Honor.
Commissioner Bonzo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Just to clarify a response to the previous question, so you mentioned that, potentially switching to, where some system where significantly more residents have recycling carts would improve safety, right? Was that what you were saying, or would it cause potentially more safety issues?
No, I think it is
It would
safer.
improve safety. We get out, our guys gotta get out manually, dump something, and they could slip. We try to wear anti-slip, footwear, a Neos, it's called, it's got screws on the bottom so these guys don't slip and fall. They could hurt their back, lifting something, Anytime we do anything manually, there's more of a risk of having an injury to one of these guys. I want my guys to go home safe every day to their families. They got kids, they got wives to go home to, and they got responsibilities as a father or a mother. We have some women, garbage men, not Marquette here, but Waste Management has a lot of women drivers, so.
And on the side of Marquette is that our number one complaint is blowing around recycle. It's like, why aren't they picking up blowing around recycle? So a cart would help that. I think that is that's not what we're bringing up to the table, but I mean, that's what I see as a benefit if it did.
Okay, thank you. Of course, as a couple of us, I think have mentioned, right, like I know I personally, as a city commissioner, have received over the last couple of years quite a few complaints about, like recycling or trash not getting picked up or getting picked up late. It does seem that it's gotten a little bit better, but I do still get some of those complaints. And so I guess just to clarify, do you feel that that's primarily become a problem because of, this significant turnover in personnel? I understand it's also a public education issue in terms of how people put out their garbage, but I imagine that probably didn't suddenly change like a couple of years ago either. So like, is there new equipment that's involved that's making things more challenging? I'm just trying to understand the root cause of some of those issues that we've been seeing.
We went to our front load system. I think having new drivers, I got the Larry, the Hagelin that's been on this route he's been here 30 years. I've done this job for 30 years, and he's probably the most efficient, caring person I've ever met in my life. He'll go out of the way to pick anything up. And like anything, you got a new breed of guys coming in age. I mean, I hold them to expectations. You guys are our customers. We're supposed to pick stuff up. I expect them not to leave messes. From time to time, does a bag fall off a truck? They don't see it. Yeah. It's at night. I drove with these guys at night. It's tough to see being at night. Thank God there ain't a lot of people and cars going around, but they do the best they can. Every week we have discussions, feedback from you guys or complaints from customers. I talk to them. If I feel it's something they should be doing, I'll make them correct them and reset the expectation with them.
But Evan, I think basically they went from, one of the things people wondered, we had a truck that would have two compartments and they would throw both things away at the same time, one recycle, one garbage. They were breaking down at the same time. The two drivers who were over 30 years in the business were breaking down. One guy actually stopped, he retired because his shoulder went out, so he couldn't do the job anymore after a couple surgeries. Larry is still around, but he's doing a job that is less physical. So in between that whole transition of the trucks going to a single truck, going down the road, doing one thing at one time, and then another truck doing the recycle, I think there was that breakup. But like I said, we hold Scott to tell us what's going on, and he keeps us in tune. It's getting better.
Yeah, you got two different drivers. So if one truck comes by, the garbage guy, he's gonna grab the bags, the garbage carts, and they run. They don't follow each other. He might start on the Monday route on one side of town, recycling guy start somewhere else. So in between that, you could have a wind pickup and some of the loose recycling does blow. I tell them guys to try to pick up as much as they can. Do I expect somebody to walk through some of the yard in the middle of the night? No. But, if there's something around that stuff, it should be cleaned up. Again, you guys are our customers, and our job is to make the residents happy here in Marquette and make you guys happy, so.
Yeah, and I mean, I really appreciate that explanation. I do think it makes things a lot clearer, and I'm sure we can keep working through whatever issues we might have moving forward. Just two other quick questions. Getting back to this recycling cart issue, just because I think it might be interesting to hear your perspective on this. So if the city were to implement some kind of universal or expanded recycling cart program, would it be possible with the equipment and the personnel that you have right now to pick up smaller carts, like say like 32 or like 40 gallon carts as opposed to the 64 gallon that we have right now? Or would that present some like logistical issues for you guys?
Can we? Yeah. I don't know if those recycling carts, were they just 64s, Scott, or?
The grant
They were
is for
just a
64s.
64, which is about, honestly, I've seen families fill 296 gallons a week in recycling. It all depends on the family, how big your family is. A 64 gallon, if you don't fill it up in 1 week, then put your cart out every other week. Just because you get a weekly pickup doesn't mean you have to haul your recycling cart every week. It's kind of a way to contain everything, stuff ain't blowing around. I guess as the years go on, everyone's got to adapt to change. And it's just the way a lot of the municipalities are going. But then again, by no means are we forcing anyone to do anything, so.
It's really up to you guys, and also the only one drawback with 30, there is a smaller one. They're super tippy, and they end up, they're worse
Their
than
base is smaller.
the smaller open ones, so they blow around a little bit.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that feedback, and actually I had found a similar thing. I think the city of Madison did away with them recently because of that
Okay,
exact
super
issue.
tippy, yeah.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. The final question I have, which is kind of related, is especially if we're going to have these larger carts, how do you currently, we heard a public comment kind of about this earlier, how do you currently make accommodations for city residents who have disabilities or who are elderly, who can't put their trash or recycling out
You
on
go
the
up and get
curb?
them and return them.
Great.
So
We
there's
got one on-
there's a process where they ask the
Yeah.
city, and then they get with us, and like, can you go to this one house and go behind it, or do whatever you need to do, and it's usually followed through a process.
Those requests come through Scott. Scott will say, I got a lady at this resident, you know, she's.
Gentleman, lady.
Yeah, either or. So what we'll do is if they have their stuff out by their porch, we'll go up, grab, if it's a cart, empty it to the truck, and then bring it back for them.
Okay, great. That's good to know.
Yeah,
'Cause I imagine you would probably see a significant increase maybe in people.
What we'll do is
requesting
we'll
that.
put a special note on the tab. These guys carry little Samsung tablets in the trucks with them. That'll be, their address will be separated from the city of Marquette residents, so they have to manually check this off that they did it. It's a reminder, it's kind of an extra checkpoint, so rather than going on memory, there's a tablet they actually got to check off that they did this out.
All right, great. Well, thanks. That's really helpful to know, and those are all the questions I have. I really appreciate your time.
I just have a few comments. As a commissioner, I've become much more garbage aware than I ever thought I would be. I drive around the city looking at the garbage cans and go, that house is doing it really well, that house is really not doing it well. And I am surprised at how few do it correctly. So I think there's a lot of room for education, and I think it could be, it's really interesting. I think the residents want to do it right, but we don't know. And I think us commissioners have learned something from your slides tonight. So I really appreciate that you are communicating with Scott and the city on a monthly or a weekly basis. That's absolutely wonderful. And I think that some of the services have been really improving. And this gives me an opportunity to let the public know that there wasn't too long ago that I had a resident call me with a complaint. And so I called Mark. And the next thing I knew, the resident called me back and, that guy Mark came to visit me. And we're good now. That was really good service. So thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
Okay, all right, well, I think
We can
that's-
continue with the educational things, information, if it's got, if you guys want more, if you want us to come do one of these again, all you gotta do is Karen can just mention something to Scott, we can more than happy come do another presentation.
Thank you. We really appreciate that. I will say I did just get my letter that was on the last slide yesterday, so, as a resident. So I think they're coming if, Commissioner Hanley mentioned she didn't get one yet, but I bet it'll be coming, so. Great, thank you. This was really, positive. Great to hear from you in person. Look forward to, continuing to communicate and work on progress. Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
Yep,
And I'll pass these down if you want a card to holler. and
perfect.
if need.
Thank you very much.
Yep, see you.
All right, we are moving on to our second presentation of the evening. We have item number 4 here. Presque Park Advisory Committee. And this will be by Chair Tara Glusky. Did I say that right?
Yep, you did.
And so it's my understanding that we've got a general update on the Presque Park Advisory Committee, or PIPAC, as we affectionately refer to it, in case you hear that acronym tonight. And then on the last slide, we've got some discussion on ordinances. So just a heads up for the commission, after the whole presentation is complete, I'll ask if the commission has any general comments about Presque or PIPAC, and then we'll have a separate conversation on the ordinances piece, where I'll go down one by one. We'll start with Commissioner Hill on that piece. We'll have 2 separate we'll try to tackle it in 2 sections.
Got it.
All right, Tara.
Okay.
Go ahead and take
alrighty.
it away. Thank you for being here.
No problem. All right, never mind, I figured it out. This is the current committee information for the members of the Presque Park Advisory Committee. As you can see, we have 4 vacancies. We do discuss this at each meeting. We are actively trying to pursue new members for the committee, and we're not having any luck as of this point. So if anybody knows people that would be interested in serving on the Presque Park Advisory Committee, I would recommend that they contact the city for that. Purpose and goals of the committee were established in 1993, and they really haven't changed since then. And so I guess the short of it is that we advocate for the park on behalf of the park, and our intentions are to review and develop recommendations that impact the island, to study the ecosystems, and to recruit and organize volunteers to maintain, repair, and improve facilities and opportunities at the park. There are numerous accomplishments listed on this slide. I'm just going to touch on a few of them specifically, but if you have questions at some point on them, feel free to ask. The first one is the adoption of the Presque Park-specific ordinances. PIPAC spent numerous years, even prior to my tenure on the committee, creating a land use policy. And over time, I understand that it was decided that the ordinance would be more enforceable. So as a result, a lot of the information that came out of the land use policy has been turned into ordinance. And first, they were compared to current ordinances to look for duplications. And where there were none, new ordinances were created, and I think a couple have passed. And then there are some still in the pending phase at this point. And that is what I believe, we'll be talking about at the end. The second one I want to point out is the implementation of forest management plan and a discussion of a deer count in order to further make recommendations about the number of deer on the island. So that's something we talk about on a monthly basis at PIPAC as well. The fire safety plan is also something we've been working on. We haven't had a lot of conversations about that, lately. And we weren't able to meet in 2020, which was when some of those discussions were happening. We weren't able to meet here, but that is a continued concern with the Presque Park Advisory Committee. And as many of you know, I don't remember who it was, but one of you called this the cutest things I've ever heard to talk about at, at a commission meeting. For the second spring in a row, the evening closure of the the Peter White Drive from mid-March to mid-April was allowing for the safe passage of the blue-spotted salamander during their migration. So we're pretty proud of that. And finally, started in 19, but 20 and 21, working with city staff in regard to replacing signage at the island, and specifically an installation of an informational kiosk, which we hope to have this spring. And the couple of things that we're trying to accomplish with that, one is to make sure that the rules of the park are easily found by people who are coming through the park. At this time, there are signs throughout the park, and they're not all in one place, so you don't necessarily know you can't have a dog until you get to a certain point. You don't necessarily know that you can't smoke until you get to the certain point. So we want to put all of these rules in one place to make it easy on the visitors, and also long-term in hopes of removing some of those residual signs that are throughout the park. Let's see. Goals for the upcoming year. So I think the biggest topic of conversation that we have week to week month to month at our meetings is surrounding the safety hazards at the island and ways to mitigate those safety hazards. And those hazards include and are a result of parking congestion, increased traffic, increased visitors, increased impact on the island, and then unfortunately just some general disregard for park rules and ordinances like fires, overnight camping, people getting too close to the edges of some of the cliffs. So we talk about that on a regular basis, and we will continue to do so and make recommendations as necessary. We're going to continue to work with city staff regarding the forest management plan and a deer management plan, and my understanding is that Moosewood is going to be doing a deer count, I believe, and so that will help us have some information going forward on how we may be able to mitigate the herd there that is getting increasingly large. And finally, just working with local partners, collaborating to help with public education regarding Leave No Trace ethics and principles. That's it. That's the presentation. How do you want to do this then?
How about you go through the ordinance changes as recommended as well, and then we'll see if commissioners have any questions, comments on the first part, and then we'll go through the ordinances.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. The first two are completed. Commission resolution prohibiting mobile food vending units in Presque Park. This one occurred, back in the summer, I believe. Not sure when the date was of that. And then the open burning regulations also completed. So 3, 4, 5, and 6 are the ordinance changes that are still pending. The first one being the ability to designate paths as inappropriate for bicycle or vehicle traffic. That's number 3. Just the main goal there is to increase safety on the trails. We hear about car/bike/pedestrian incidences, and mostly with pedestrian and bike incidences inside the island where bikes are technically prohibited. Number 4 is prohibiting unreasonable congestion on city beaches or property possibly linked to commercial activities. I think one of the background pieces on this is people coming to the island and hosting an event such as a wedding without having a permit. So creating congestion, say at Black Rocks or at the Cove, with a large number of people holding a quick wedding, but still it's impacting the other visitors. And so we're looking at ways to mitigate that. Let's see, prohibiting the feeding of geese and wild animals on the public property. This goes back to the deer count as well, because the more that we feed these animals, the larger that herd becomes. And so we want to make sure that we are educating the public, but also putting in place something that will hold people accountable for breaking that rule. And prohibiting the removal of or damage to soils, minerals, rocks, etc. I think that one speaks for itself. The main goal is to prevent the removal of or damage to soils, minerals, rocks, etc. So those are the 4 here. Yeah, if any questions, I will do my best, and I will probably lean on John, who I hope is here, in the event that, there he is, hi, in the event that I don't have all the background information on some of these, because some of this information came up prior to my tenure on PIPAC, so.
I will just ask, thank you, Tara.
Sure.
Nice presentation. Commissioners, if you have any questions not related to the ordinances, if we do the questions and comments on that first, and then we'll roll into the ordinance conversation a little bit. Commissioner Hull?
2 questions. I have understanding that dogs aren't allowed, but service dogs are. And I have had, I see someone walking a dog, they're not wearing a service garment or whatever, leash. And I've had people tell me, they don't appreciate that I introduce myself as an elected official. I say, you probably don't know this and I'm really sorry. And, oh no, I can take my service dog where I want. And which is, so I want some clarification because I'm trying to be helpful, but it has not always gone well.
I don't know that I'm the person that can provide the clarification. I think that sounds like a legal answer. But yeah, I think ADA requires that service animals are allowed in places even when they're prohibited for other reasons, but I don't know how that would be addressed differently.
I'm wondering if maybe staff could weigh in on this,
Yeah.
and I'm wondering if maybe our chief of police could give a tip for someone like a commissioner trying to address a rule being broken on the island, if you've had any advice there.
I guess, is the question regarding service dogs, or is it regarding?
If there's a dog, someone's walking a dog on the island, and they don't have their service, they say there's a service dog, but they don't have the vest.
Well, if it is a service dog, there are certain regulations that govern the service dogs. However, we do teeter between the fact that some people take advantage of the service dog situation, and it's sometimes hard to determine that. What we usually try to do is educate. So if we respond to a complaint of that nature, what we'll usually do is make contact and then work through that issue with the person to determine whether or not it is a service dog or not, and then kind of handle it appropriately at that point. So there are certain regulations regarding service dogs that and guidelines that don't allow us to dwell too deep into that topic. So it's kind of a very, I don't want to say gray area, but very limited area. So we don't run into that issue a ton, but there are certain situations, not just there, but other places also.
Thank you,
So is
Chief.
that as clear as mud?
Well, it helps to understand that it's complex.
Yes.
And that it's.
Yeah, I have a printout that I gave to our officers regarding service dogs, and I can forward that to the city manager, and then she can disperse that amongst you guys. And that's kind of a guideline, what we use for officers respond to those type of complaints.
Thank you. That would be very, very helpful.
Absolutely.
And then and the other one that comes up is hammocks. So, and hammocks are prohibited at Presque.
I believe the ordinance is all city property.
Yes.
Which includes Presque, yes.
Yes.
Yep.
any city property. There are, and, you know, John can elaborate on it. We do have an ordinance regarding the damage and the attachment of certain items to city property, including trees, shrubs, and et cetera, so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hill.
Any other commissioners for comments or questions about PIPAC in general? Mr. Stonehouse?
Just a question on ordinance perhaps. Do we have anything that prohibits RVs, big campers, any campers from going on the island?
No.
Why not? I mean, these monster trucks, they try and drive down that little driveway.
Yep.
Certainly
We've had
dangerous.
conversations about that at Presque Park Advisory Committee, so that is a topic of conversation. We discuss it in terms of the possible detriment to the longevity of the road, to the trees above, things like that. But I don't know that we could certainly make the recommendation if the group agreed, but I don't know that, I don't know how far that would move.
Could we simply put the guard up at the gate, i.e. the two metal posts up and the swing bar top? That would legally, I assume, since they use them everywhere, prohibit any vehicle from larger than that going on the highway, going past.
Again, we just discussed that exact idea. So recently, the archway came down in an unfortunate accident. And part of the discussion we had at PIPAC is, could we put something up there? Could we make the recommendation to the city to put something up there to dissuade people with large vehicles from coming onto the island? And at this point, that hasn't happened, but it would certainly be something we can continue discussing.
Thank you. I think it would be much needed, and again, the fire department complains to us often about the difficulty of getting emergency vehicles down the island as needed, and these big monsters certainly just stop up everything. So we
Yeah,
need to have an active policy that would
appreciate
include
that.
that. Thank you.
Commissioner Davis?
You know, thank you for your to your committee, because I feel that this is a committee that has a lot of passion for a very precious commodity that we have in our city, and a lot of the work that you've done over the years has helped to protect the park. One of the things, well, first of all, I want to say something about the signage. I really appreciate that you're thinking about improving the signage, and I would ask you to keep it positive and not a lot of don't do this and don't do this and don't do this, but somehow keep it simple, easy to comply with, and still welcoming to the public. The one thing that I haven't heard from you that I really would like to is some long-range planning for Presque Isle. You know, we have a band shell that is in dire need of repair or replacement. We have a Moose Woods building that doesn't look real good. We have a playground that needs upgrading. We have some very vulnerable areas like Black Rocks that need to pay attention to. And what does Presque Isle, what should it look like in 10 or 15 years? And if we could plan for that now, we could put it into some of our planning for the city and really work towards funding something that would really even more so preserve those resources, yet also allow more people to enjoy the whole park. So that, I guess that would be my one suggestion, is to start looking at some long-term strategic planning with that committee.
Okay, strategic planning. Yeah, we actually talk about a lot of those things, Commissioner Davis, and I'm writing this down, so that's, I'm not ignoring you. Specifically, we've had conversations about the band shell. We talk about erosion, we talk about the longevity of the road, talk about things like that. And ultimately, any recommendation we make would be a recommendation to the city. And unfortunately, most of those recommendations come with a price tag. Right, so, but we will continue to make the recommendations, and we welcome that feedback. Thank you.
They come with a price tag, but then there are opportunities for granting, and someday we might have a budget that's really verbose.
Absolutely, thank you.
Anyone else on the commission for general discussion?
Well, just one comment, Your Honor. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for the passionate group of people you have on that committee.
Thank you.
They truly are, I think, doing a great service for the city. So thank you.
Thank you.
I would agree with that sentiment. Thank you, Commissioner Jones. Oh, Commissioner Bonzel.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. One general comment and then one general question. So my comment is that, you mentioned the band shell just now. Clearly, that's a critical need. And of course, that's something we need to worry about as commissioners, as well as your committee, but ultimately, we control city funds. And I do think that we need to really make that a priority for the next couple of years to try and find a good grant that has a relatively low match that we can cover. Because that is an incredibly important and historic asset to our community that does need to be replaced quite urgently. The question I had, Presque Park Advisory Committee last year recommended that the city commission adopt an ordinance prohibiting food trucks on the island, if I remember correctly. And if I remember correctly, that was a 4-3. It was quite a close vote.
Right.
I voted yes. But like several of my colleagues, I think I was like a little conflicted. And I'd be curious to see, if you have any data on whether that has actually resulted in a reduction in like some of the litter issues and congestion issues that we saw on the island.
I don't have any data. Does anybody remember what month that was? Okay, because I'm not sure how much data there would be.
John does.
Okay.
That'd be June, I believe.
It was June?
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know if any data was collected. John, do you have any information about that? Not yet, okay. So I think, it's a pretty recent change, and I think that if there's going to be data collected, it would require some more time. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
I just would like to see it at some point, just because, again, it was a close commission vote, and something that if it's not having a significant positive effect, maybe the commission would want to reassess in the future. At least speaking for myself, that's kind of how I feel. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, I think we can probably go on to the ordinance conversation unless I missed a hand. Thank you, Tara. Really appreciate you being here and hanging tight.
Do you need me to remain up here, or?
Up to city staff. What do we think?
I can, it's no problem.
It's more of a question for you if you have questions on specific
We don't
ordinances,
know.
but no, I don't.
I'll stand right here.
Okay.
You let me know.
So we've got 4 ordinances that we are looking at. These are being recommended by PIPAC for potential moving forward. It would mean legal. Suzanne and maybe some city staff would need to spend some time putting these together. They haven't been put together yet, but these are ones that PIPAC is, I'm just making sure I got that all straight. So it's my understanding that city staff is looking for some direction as to, which any or none of these ordinances the city commission would like to move forward on. From there, I guess I don't know. I need a little bit more information about the ordinances to be able to make that informed decision. Do we have, I don't know. I'm looking at Karen.
So I think in concept, based off of the brief explanation that we've heard, we're looking more for if this is something that the commission feels as a priority and that you would like to see these worked on and come before you for some sort of consideration. So while I know it seems rather vague by just looking at the title, but I do think that there was some good description in that. It's before we spend a great deal of time on looking at going forward and compiling this, we do want to just get the feelers out and see what we're looking for. So if whether it's an all or a nothing or a individual, great, but.
So I'm going to go ahead and go down the line then. We'll start with Commissioner Hill and do alphabetical thoughts on that.
Thank you. So we're looking at 3, 4, 5, and 6. And they certainly seem valuable. As a user of the facility, I'm hearing that there's safety issues related. There's questions of congestion. So and I know some people have a lot of emotional attachment to feeding those animals, but it's very bad for them, as well as bad and I used to work down there, and I'm out there now as a community gardener. I'm out there a lot, and people are literally putting food out the car window and feeding the animals. The animals are going to get hit and hurt, and people are going to get hurt. So I think those are 4 items worth working on. I understand that there is the press of other business, so I am comfortable with also saying that the city attorney has discretion, but it would be great to see these come before us. You know, I don't, but I'm not going to put a time frame on it, but I do think they are worth acting on.
3, 4, 5, 6 in order, and I would suggest that we determine a way, since we are doing ordinances in which we intend to enforce, that we have a ranger that would be assigned to the park during the summer season for the enforcement purposes. Now, how that works out between hiring and police department capability of writing a ticket, a summons for failure to, or for performing anything against the ordinances, I think we need to figure out. But I do think without enforcement, none of these make any sense. So somebody's got to be charged with enforcement that actually can do so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bonzo?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I think that's a very good point by Commissioner Stonehouse. I agree that it makes sense to move forward on consideration of all of these ordinances. However, I just had a couple of questions about two of them. So first of all, let's see, item number 3, ordinance to provide the ability to designate paths as inappropriate for bicycle or vehicular traffic. Would the back loop on Presque Isle be legally defined as a path under this ordinance? Because I think that's always a continuous source of concern and debate within the community about the long-term future of the ability to drive or bike on the back loop of Presque Isle.
The paved loop, Commissioner?
Yeah, that people currently can drive vehicles on right now.
Yeah, so that is currently the only place where a bicycle should be is on the paved parts of the park. And that ordinance would be designating the paths that are inappropriate for bicycle or vehicle traffic, which would be the non-paved parts.
Okay, so that...
Did I get that correct, John? Okay, thank you.
So that would not, just to clarify, that would not in any way affect or empower the city to prohibit people driving around the island or
Right.
ride bicycles around the island on that paved road, essentially.
Correct. This is specifically for designation of bicycle paths.
Okay,
Yep.
great. I just wanted to make that clarification. The other question, I guess, has there been any, consideration or projection of potential impacts on local wildlife, positive or negative, of the prohibition on feeding of animals? Because, for example, if we all know, or I hope folks know, if you feed ducks white bread or certain other things, that's really bad for them, right? That's objectively bad. But at the same time, as I think Commissioner Hill noted, right, that we have a lot of residents who feed deer. I think there's a very non-trivial amount of calories that get transferred to the deer population in Marquette by our city residents. And if we prohibit that and actually enforce it, are we going to see a whole lot of dead deer? This is, to be frank, and then
Sure.
and there's going to be a public reaction to that, that's just my question is, have we assessed any of that?
Let me see if I can answer that. I'm not an expert. Let me start there. I think the big picture concern with feeding the deer is an increase in population of the deer. And I think the public would have a larger problem with what could result with a larger population of deer on the island than they would with not being able to feed the deer. So I think, the not feeding of the deer is one way to mitigate an increase in the herd. And generally, it's not healthy and safe for the deer anyway. So, again, objectively, like you said, it's just not good for them. We shouldn't be feeding them the things that we're feeding them. And my understanding was there were people feeding them donuts. And so I think that unfortunately, something like this it's kind of, there can't be a gray area. It's either you can or you can't. And to protect their health and to protect the size of the herd, I think that it's best if we're not feeding animals on the island.
That sounds good. I agree with everything you just said. Would this apply to the entire city then as well, or just to Presque Isle?
I believe the ordinance would apply to the entire city. Is that correct?
Well, and if I can butt in for just a second.
Sure.
It actually is illegal by state law to feed deer on public property. It has been for several years. I remember long before our office was city attorney, actually, people being ticketed and ending up in court for feeding deer out at the island. But that has been a state law for quite some time.
that doesn't necessarily impact feeding of the geese, but feeding deer on public property is illegal.
All right, well, I think that makes our decision quite simple. But thank you for indulging that, because it was just something I had thought about. But those are all the questions I had.
Commissioner Davis?
Yes, when it comes to ordinance, I always want to know to what degree is it a problem? And can it be covered in something that's already present, such as it's already a state law to not feed the deer? And some of this, we have to look towards your committee, who are the people that study these things and are more of the experts in it, to make those recommendations. So I'd be willing to entertain any of them. And there is an issue with compliance, and maybe that's some of the signage. There are a lot of people who do comply when they see signs. There are other people who won't bother to read them and may still have that wedding or that gathering.
Sure.
And I don't know to what degree that is a problem. So that's difficult to know. I also have no idea what number 6 means. Does that mean I can't go looking for my beach glass? Does that mean if I happen to climb a hill that I am damaging the soil? So that one is a tough one for me. I mean, I don't know to what degree that is a problem. And if there is another way to address any of these in the ordinances that we already have, I would not necessarily be in favor of that. I also would like them to be coordinated with other, I don't want to have a lot of special ordinances just for Presque Isle, but if they are, as you were talking about, feeding geese, if it was a citywide, that is more comfortable for me than having a bunch of special ordinances for Presque Isle that the citizens don't know what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do.
Thank you. I have 2 things. The first is, my understanding is, and correct me if I'm wrong, these ordinances would be city ordinances.
Yep.
They just might have started as a result of conversations that were happening with PIPAC. So the land use policies were started several years ago, and those were being written for Presque Isle Park Advisory, or I'm sorry, for Presque Isle Park with the Presque Isle Park Advisory Committee. And what happened was those land use policies were brought to, I think, the city attorney, and I believe you've already looked for duplications. Is that correct?
I would love to take credit for that, but that was actually the clerk's office that
Okay.
found several items that are not here that were duplicates. Some of these, again, may be covered by state law as it is, but there were several other things that have already been weeded out that already are covered under your local ordinances. And you can thank Kyle and Rachel for that.
So the hope is that we're not creating duplicates. This ideally is, in an effort not to do that.
Yeah, and that's a good point, and I think Suzanne's right with that. So previous city attorney reviewed all of the land use plan that PIPAC had put together, and really that document was 2 pages long and very detailed. And through the city attorney's office and the clerk's office, it was determined that the majority of it was already covered by ordinances that exist. And the second part of your question, creating new ordinances, all of these I think would be amending existing ordinances. So adding a little bit of verbiage that would clarify and allow the officers to do enforcement was the goal of it.
So how much of a problem is number 6? I mean, are people mining?
So
Or are they picking up beach glass?
Yeah, so we've had complaints about people, going out with pickaxes. There are shiny minerals within the volcanic rock that look a little bit like gold. It's actually pyrite, and people will chip away at the rock and try and, claim their stake. So that does exist. Also, some of the metal detecting activities. And there's an old abandoned silver mine on park property that people get intrigued about and interested, despite the fact that it was abandoned for a reason.
It is for those reasons that we rely on your committee to advise us, because I don't know that there's mining out there. Thank you.
Commissioner Hanlon?
Okay, I actually mostly have questions about number 4, especially since it would be citywide. how many people are we talking we would be limiting this to?
Well,
What would be unreasonable?
well, I can't answer the number. I don't remember exactly how the land use policy was written, but it was in an effort to prohibit these things from happening on the island. And as a result, it's going to be potentially amending a current ordinance to create that citywide. So I can't answer that citywide. I would only be able to talk about how those conversations occurred regarding specifically Presque Isle. If you're looking
Okay.
for citywide, I would definitely rely on city staff for those questions.
Okay, then the other portion of that, say you were talking is commercial, like you're saying a wedding specifically, but I know that when I was at Northern, the first week of school that we were there, we had multiple groups that were taken down in very large groups, specifically to go to Presque Isle to jump at Black Rocks. And you're saying that a wedding couldn't happen with 10 people there, or how many ever people it ends up being, but you can have that enormous group from Northern with no problem. I'm confused as to why we would single out people who would be trying to get married.
Well, we're not
I know, but I mean, like, that's what was
singling out
mentioned.
marriage, no. Organized events, and in this scenario, and again, John can pop in and share what they know too. Events that are being organized and then potentially limiting the access to other people. So in the stories that I've heard, there were actually chairs. There was an event. It wasn't just a few people standing around to get married. It was an actual event with chairs without a permit. So, and John, you have additional probably information?
Yeah, so I guess what we generally tell people in our office is, if you would like to have a ceremony on any public property, it's public property. The goal of it is that the taxpayers are paying for this, and it's there for the enjoyment and the general use of the public. And so if you have a small, indiscreet ceremony and you're willing to have frisbees thrown through it as it's happening, and you're not bringing anything out to it, we're probably not going to say anything about that. But this is really aimed at, we've had some instances where trucks have backed up, chairs have been dragged out to Black Rocks, tents erected, amplified sound brought in, to the point where the complaints that we get on things of that nature would be, I came to Marquette to enjoy the resource, to enjoy the weekend with my family, and I wasn't able to go out to the park and enjoy it because there was this thing that took over everything. So it's a fine line, and this would be one that, we're basically asking your permission to delve a little deeper into. So with the language that would be involved, the city attorney and the city clerk would, and our staff would get to the bottom of what would be the most reasonable for that. So.
Okay, just a little bit more about that. Since it would be citywide, say, I know that I've wanted my friends' kids' birthday parties down at Picnic Rocks. Would that be something that would be not allowed because they did bring a cake and the streamers and things like that?
Certainly not. That would be just fine, yeah.
Okay.
So it really gets into the things that we've tossed around for language would be, bringing in outside resources such as chairs, tables, stages, tents, those things of that nature, amplified sound, hiring a company to come and set something up, things of that nature. But the actual language of what we can and cannot dictate would come out of this process. So.
Okay, thank you.
Pro Tem Mayor?
All right, thank you. I think the only question I had left at this point was just hitting on 6 a little bit. I think maybe just rewording that to maybe say no prospecting on the island, or just city property. When I first read that, my immediate thought was my daughter, who since the time she's been able to walk, she's going to be 2 in a couple weeks here. I don't know why. It doesn't matter where we go, but she finds little rocks, and that little girl loves those rocks. I can't take them from her. And I'm just like, are we gonna go start finding people because like their kids are picking up rocks? Like, I feel like there's a point where we're maybe getting a little too heavy with regulating. But I think no prospecting would maybe be a fair request.
Yeah, some of the other interesting stories. So, there's the show Parks and Rec, and we think we could probably rival that with some of our stories that we did. But we've heard complaints about people, coming down with multiple 5-gallon buckets and filling them up for some art project or something else that they were going to go back and do with. And that's a little different than, well, that's a really pretty rock. So it's all in the scale, I guess. Ultimately, with Presque, we generally tend to err on the side of, it's a very precious resource that was gifted to the city, and we have a task to protect that resource. And due to the fact that it's so popular, we get such a pressure. And if everybody came in and picked up a bucket full of rocks, we'd probably have a pretty big problem on our hands. So sometimes the national park system sees this as places become more and more popular. Regulations that might seem a little bit over the top, do tend to make sense when it's scaled up in that way. So we'll again delve into the exact language and try and strike a balance with it. But also, I think the police chief would say that it's all the discretion of officers when it comes to actual enforcement.
And the island is something I hold very sacred personally, and as Commissioner Bonsall mentioned earlier, I also was one of the 4 that voted on the food truck issue as far as removing those from the island. But I think if you maybe language like that stating I think there's a reasonable level of
Yeah, the state actually has some language.
Right, there is a difference between someone picking up a rock or filling up a 5-gallon bucket. You're right, there's a big difference there.
The state may have a quota per year that people can remove from Great Lakes. There is a law already that governs some of it, so.
Sure.
The other place where the sort of wedding question came up, I remember a couple of years ago, was a lighthouse. And as we were bringing the lighthouse on, and the question of offering a permit so that we would give you the right to keep people out, but you're going to pay for that. And where does this fall in relation to that question? Because you can get a permit and say, yes, I'm going to have a wedding, and I'm going to have chairs, and I'm going to have at the lighthouse, I believe.
So item 4, basically, the reason it's all city beaches is that's already taken from chapter 33, I believe. So the intent with this was Presque Isle, but you're correct. We are working on a city commission policy that would allow us to rent out the green space at Lighthouse Park to generate revenue, and to also focus when we get these calls of where that activity can happen, to give them a beach and a green space at venue that we can also capitalize a little bit of revenue toward a historic property.
Thank you.
And I think the distinction there is that we have a space that we recognize as maybe a good location to rent out versus we don't have any interest in renting out the rock at Black Rocks for events. Correct. So to go a step further and say, if you're putting out tents on the rocks at Black Rocks, well, we've got an ordinance that might prevent you from doing so. Commissioner Stonehill?
Your Honor, and John too, this is going on now, and you'll find it perhaps a little bit interesting. Around Lighthouse Point, particularly on the sand beach area on the southern side of it, in the water, there's a large number of red bricks. And those bricks are from what's left of the old fog building that was blown up in the 1980s. Somebody on eBay is selling them. You literally can go on eBay, type up Marquette Lighthouse red bricks, and it'll pop up that they're selling them for, I think, $20 a piece. So you certainly do have prospecting, a little different angle going on. That you can decide what you want to do with it, stop it or not, but it's an ongoing process.
Commissioner Bonsall?
Yeah, thank you. I imagine the red bricks are probably more valuable pound for pound than pyrite from Presque. But anyway, I did have one clarifying question that occurred to me from Commissioner Hanley's line of questioning there. So the ordinance to prohibit unreasonable congestion, number 4, the one thing that is causing me a little bit of concern, or I guess confusion with this, is the final clause there where it says possibly linked to commercial activity. I think it's going to be very important that when we eventually bring this ordinance forward to the city commission, that we're clearly defining what constitutes commercial activity. Like, personally, I mean, like, I personally would not have a problem, with somebody bringing like one folding table out to a park for like a birthday party or some other like small kind of gathering or event. I mean, like, maybe we have different opinions on that, but I mean, that's just my perspective. So that's the kind of discussion that I'd like to have. I don't see that as being a commercial activity, as long as no like money is changing hands, right?
Yeah, that's, we tell people all the time, if you bring, a lawn chair out or a table, a small folding table, those are things that happen all the time. So it's when it really impedes the general public's use of the green space that we're concerned about it.
I guess I would just add, I would want to make sure that whatever ordinances we decide to adopt or think about, that we're really thinking citywide. And I think right now it's easy just to think about Presque. And I know some of you have brought up examples, but I think that's hard to think about in a vacuum. So I would ask city staff to maybe help guide us down that path. If you run into a stumbling block with one or more of these, it is possible that, one or two or three of these may come before the commission and there's a holdup on one, or that, one has entirely decided to not move forward. And I guess I would just expect staff would spend the time and look at that and let us know why. But I just don't want to, look at adopting something that, like we're talking about, how does this impact, folks who are having birthday parties or folks who are gathering at beaches or, so it's just, I just want to make sure we're being cognizant of that. It may solve a problem at Presque. I just don't want it to create a problem somewhere else.
Sure,
so,
absolutely.
but I think that they're valid concerns and I appreciate you bringing them to us. It sounds like we've got some consensus to move forward on getting these looked at. I'm not sensing an immediate urgency. So I would say, I know we have a lot of really critical things related to budget and, tax revenue, and those things are kind of the top of mind right now, but this is certainly important and, should get added to the list of things to accomplish. So thank you to Tara for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you to staff for weighing in on the variety of questions that we had, especially John, and look forward to seeing how this progresses. All right, we will now move on to our consent agenda. This will require a roll call vote due to item, well, it was 5K, but I think it's 5J now. Resolutions for dedication of McClellan Avenue and Center Street. So that one makes it require a roll call vote. I just wanted to point that out. All right, commissioners, do we have a motion on consent? Commissioner Bonzel?
I would move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
And do we have a second? Pro Tem Mayor?
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion? City Clerk, could you please conduct a roll call vote?
Commissioner Bonzalt,
Yes.
Commissioner Davis,
Yes.
Commissioner Hanley,
Yes.
Commissioner Hill,
Yes.
Commissioner Stonehouse, Mayor Pro Tem Mayor,
Yes.
and Mayor Smith.
Yes. Motion passes 7-0. All right, moving on to new business, and we have 4 items under new business. Just to remind folks, we added number 8, which was 5I, the municipal tractor purchase, and we added number 9, an EDA tourism grant application. Okay, so on to number 6. This is to schedule a public hearing for the Uroduct Brewing Company Brownfield plan. This will require a roll call vote. City Clerk, could we have the background, please?
Thank you, Mayor. The Uroduct Brewing Company has purchased the blighted building at 214 South Front Street and has acquired the adjacent surplus city property for the development of a beer garden that will be a 3-season outdoor food, beverage, and entertainment center in downtown Marquette. In addition to the building demolition and outdoor venue, Uroduct Brewing will be expanding the building footprint and brewing capacity. Anticipated private investment is approximately $1.5 million. As part of the project, environmental response activities, asbestos abatement, demolition of the blighted building at 214 South Front Street, and site preparation activities are necessary, and a brownfield plan is being proposed to reimburse these extraordinary expenses through the capture of increased taxes generated by the additional private investment. The brownfield plan also includes a non-motorized trail connection between the Rosewood Walkway and the Iron Ore Heritage Trail. A public hearing must be established and held by the City Commission for the approval of the brownfield plan. The property is located in the Downtown Development Authority, DDA, and Local Development Finance Authority, LDFA, tax increment financing districts, which have first right to certain tax increment revenues. In order to receive approval for state tax capture for eligible activities, the Michigan Economic Development Corporation and Michigan Strategic Fund require either a proportionate expense or approval to forego future tax increment revenues from the DDA and LDFA to reimburse Brownfield eligible activities. An interlocal agreement under the Urban Cooperation Act with the Marquette Brownfield Redevelopment Authority to forego future revenues for Brownfield eligible activity expenses was approved by the DDA at their January 13th, 2022 meeting and by the LDFA at their January 25th, 2022 meeting. The attached Brownfield plan was presented to and approved by the MBRA at their January 20th, 2022 meeting. Attached is a resolution for consideration by the City Commission to schedule a public hearing for the February 14th, 2022 City Commission meeting. The Brownfield plan will be presented for City Commission consideration at that meeting. Fiscal effect, none by this action. Recommendation, approve the attached resolution to schedule a public hearing for the Uroduct Beer Garden Brownfield Plan for the February 14th, 2022 City Commission meeting. Alternatives as determined by the Commission.
Thank you, City Clerk. And Commissioners, do we have a motion on this item to schedule a public hearing? Commissioner Stonehouse.
Your Honor, I motion to approve the attached resolution to schedule a public hearing for the Uroduct Beer Garden Brownfield Plan for the February 14th, 2022 City Commission meeting.
And do we have a second? Commissioner Hill.
I second.
Commissioner Stonehouse, any discussion?
Well, I think it's a great use of or rather of the property. I think it will enhance downtown, and I will also note that the eventual payback of that will be coming to the DDA.
And Commissioner Hill, any discussion?
I thank you for articulating it so clearly. Commissioner Stonehouse, I have no further comment.
Any additional comments from the commission? I would just like to add that typically the scheduling of a public hearing is in the consent agenda, but at agenda review on Friday, we thought it was appropriate to pull off because it is a brownfield plan. But, you know, certainly can have more discussion at the February 14th meeting. This, again, is just to get that scheduled at this point. All right, let's go ahead and take a vote. City Clerk, could you please conduct a roll call vote?
Commissioner Bonzal,
Yes.
Commissioner Davis,
Yes.
Commissioner Hanley,
Yes.
Commissioner Hill,
Yes.
Commissioner Stonehouse,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mayor,
Yes.
and Mayor Smith.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. All right, moving on to item number 7. Making sure that I'm keeping track here because we switched things up a little. It's still the fire truck maintenance agreement. City Clerk, could you please read the background?
Thank you, Mayor. Recently, the Powell Township Fire Chief contacted the city with a request to consider a fire vehicle maintenance and repair service agreement between the City of Marquette and Powell Township. This agreement will allow city motor pool mechanics to service township vehicles and invoice the township for the work. The additional revenue generated will help offset department personnel costs. The proposed agreement, attached, has been negotiated by city and township staff and approved by the city attorney. This agreement was approved by the township on January 18th, 2022. Fiscal effect, all revenue generated through this agreement will be placed into the Motor Vehicle Equipment Fund. Recommendation, approve the agreement for fire truck repair services between the city and Powell Township and authorize the city manager to sign the agreement. Alternatives as determined by the commission.
Thank you, City Clerk. Commissioners, do we have a motion? Commissioner Hanley.
I motion that we approve the agreement for fire truck repair services between the city and Powell Township and authorize the city manager to sign the agreement.
And do we have a second? Commissioner Bonzal?
Yeah, I'll second that motion, Your Honor.
Commissioner Hanley, any discussion?
A little bit. I would like to say that I think that this is a fantastic use of the amazing mechanics that we have and city staff, and it's a great way to not only help a local township as we do for other townships, but also to increase revenue in a place while using the people that we have. So I really think this is a great idea.
Commissioner Bonzal, anything to add?
Yeah, I agree completely with Commissioner Hanley. I mean, this is exactly the kind of regional approach I think that we need to be taking to problem solving more and more in the area. We already have virtually identical agreements with 2 other neighboring townships, so I think it's a common sense vote.
Any other discussion from the commission? All right, let's go ahead and take a vote. All in favor, please say yes.
Yes. Yes.
All opposed, please say no. Motion passes 7-0. And up next, we've got item number 8. Municipal tractor purchase. City Clerk, could we have the background, please?
Thank you, Mayor. The Department of Public Works currently utilizes 2 municipal tractors on a year-round basis for grass cutting, sidewalk plowing, and grounds maintenance. This purchase replaces a 2013 MB tractor that is obsolete and no longer being manufactured. The purchase of a new 4-wheel drive municipal tractor with attachment was included in the fiscal year 21-22 capital outlay budget. The city is currently a member of the Sourcewell Purchasing Program, which is a national public service agency that provides cooperative purchasing assistance for state and municipal entities and is similar in function to the State of Michigan purchasing program known as My Deal. By utilizing the Sourcewell Purchasing Program, the McLean MV5 tractor purchase will be routed through the regional MV dealer, Miller, Bradford, and Rissburg, located in Negaunee, Michigan. In addition, the city will receive an estimated $9,250 in savings when compared to MSRP. Fiscal effect, the Motor Pool Fund capital outlay budget for fiscal year 21-22 contains $200,000 for this purchase. Recommendation, authorize city staff to utilize the Sourcewell Purchasing Program to purchase 1 McLean MV5 tractor with attachments from Miller, Bradford, and Rissburg of Negaunee, Michigan, in an amount not to exceed $170,000. Alternatives as determined by the commission.
Commissioners, do we have a motion on this item? Commissioner Hanley?
Can I motion to suspend the rules for discussion?
And do we have a second on that motion?
I'll second the motion, Your Honor.
All in favor, please say yes.
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 All opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Commissioner Hanley?
I asked to take this off of our consent agenda for a couple of reasons. This is a very large purchase in a time when we are asking the city for a possible increase to their property taxes. It is not a little amount. And I want to make sure that every decision that we're making, that we're spending money, we are looking at it and making sure we are spending the right amount. When I'm on a budget at my house, I make sure that I'm buying a good thing. You don't want to buy something that's going to break immediately, but you also don't need the top of the line sometimes. And so I want to make sure that what we're doing is exactly that. And I want to hold us accountable for every cent that we're spending of the citizens' money at this point. Because right now, it matters. If we're asking for an increase, I think we should make sure that every bit that we're spending, whether it is already accounted for in the budget or not, is what needs to be spent. And when I looked at this, it was something that I know that we need the tractors to plow the sidewalks and to remove leaves and to do the mowing. I'm not saying that this is an inappropriate thing, but that is and I don't buy tractors for a living, so I don't know what the cost is on this, but $170,000 does seem like a large purchase for something that does just those 3 purposes. So I wanted to make sure that we were doing the right thing.
Were you looking for city staff to respond to that? Okay.
Gladly. You raised some really great points, and I'm actually very happy that our commissioners are really taking a closer look at some of these expenditures, especially something of this nature and this size of a purchase. I will say that we do go out for bid using the Sourcewell Purchasing Program, so we know that we're at least getting the right price for this item. We already do have, I believe, an MV5 municipal tractor that we replaced, I believe, within the past 2 years, maybe even last year. And so by having, again, the same brand, we are able to use parts, swap parts, order a little bit more, probably with a price discount on anything that we do need. Now, the reason we are switching to this MV5 tractor versus the MB tractor is because, as mentioned, the manufacturer is no longer servicing that 2013 MB tractor. So we can't get the parts. It will be harder to service. So we had a need to upgrade. We do have 2 of these tractors now, or would have 2 of these tractors again, so we can be using those parts interchangeably. But also, we have a need to have 2 tractors. We are covering, gosh, and this is almost like a quiz. I don't remember how many miles of sidewalk we are plowing, but this is a big help in being able to be efficient and quick with those. We had a recent example in a recent snowstorm. We had a tractor down and had to, I'm not going to call it the DDA, but we loaned the DDA on one of our tractors, and we're down without a tractor, and it did delay some of our sidewalk plowing. So there is a need for that. And as you mentioned, they also they're used for the leaves and the grass. So I will say that we review the equipment purchases quite extensively. We did just have a meeting with Carl Miller, a supervisor in the motor pool, department and went through a large list going out for many years, and it is quite extensive. So I do believe that we are looking ahead at getting ahead of an issue if we needed to purchase something that we felt would break down within the next year or so, and we have the ability to do that now. And pushing that out only delays that as well. So I'm hoping that helps kind of calm a few of those questions. But I really welcome these questions and these discussions, whether it's here or prior to the meeting as well.
There discussion from the commission? I'll go, if Pretend Mayor has anything, because I think you made the second. And if you don't, I'll go to other commissioners. I just wanted to check.
Sure. My only input is if we were looking at the more drastic sense of the $1.9 million shortfall, this would take off about 9% of that budget deficit for the year that we were looking at. Was really the only thing I was going to contribute to that.
Other commissioners? Commissioner Bonzo?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. This had also caught my eye as I was looking at the agenda, so I'm glad that Commissioner Hanley removed it so we could have some additional discussion. I guess what I'm trying to understand are it is $200,000 budgeted at $170,000 not to exceed. Either way, it seems like a lot of money to be spending on a tractor. Now, I'm by no means an expert on these things, but I guess like just if we could have some kind of like explanation of what specific like unique purposes make this tractor particularly like suited for what we're using it for, or like why it seems that that's just a high sticker price, to be frank, just in doing some cursory research on what tractors normally cost.
While I have driven a tractor, a municipal tractor is not one I am specialized in either. So I do have Eric here to kind of answer that question if you so please.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So, a municipal tractor is a pretty unique piece of equipment. I mean, the reason it's specifically used in municipalities, which is why it gets its name, they're very narrow. They're not like driving a Kubota or a John Deere tractor, meant for like farm use. They're a very narrow tractor, very high horsepower, used specifically a lot for clearing snow, because you need something narrow to get down through the sidewalks to do that. We utilize other attachments, for mowing and other things like that. But really, it's a very heavy-duty built piece of equipment. I'd like to add, we did go out to bid for this exact item last year. We didn't use Sourcewell because we weren't sure what type of tractor we were going to purchase. So we went out to bid, we released bids, we had 4 people respond. One of them, which is what I consider the Cadillac model of municipal tractors, was about $100,000 more than this. This one came in probably middle of the road. The other 2 didn't even meet specification because they weren't the right size. They could either offer something too small or something too large. So this particular brand really fit our unique situation up, in the city here. So unless you see one, they're in an enclosed cab. They're not, they're not open. They are unique. You've probably seen them running down the road. We do have a couple different kinds, but they all look pretty similar.
Okay, thank you. And my understanding, right, is that part of the appeal of getting this exact same models, we already have one, so we can use those parts interchangeably, as the city manager said, right? So like that's also, is that part of why maybe we also went with, like, was this the lowest bid that met specifications, or were there other factors?
So when we bid it out last year, this was the lowest bid that met specification. And then going this year using the Sourcewell, we were able to get good pricing on it, knowing what type of tractor we were looking for. And since they're dealer specific, region specific, the reason we use Sourcewell on something like this instead of my deal is that given the geographic nature of where we're at compared to dealers, we tend to fall into the Minnesota and Wisconsin market. And Sourcewell used to be known as Minnesota State Bid, and that's kind of the region that they serve there. So the My Deal didn't even offer something like this. So we were able to utilize Sourcewell to get the pricing from a local dealer, Miller Brad.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that helps a lot. So I appreciate that clarification. And I mean, at the end of the day, we did budget $200,000 and are coming in under budget. So I guess that is something to consider as well.
Any other discussion, comments? City Manager?
I do think it's important to note that these funds are coming from the motor pool budget funds, and that fund receives revenue sources from various funds that use these pieces of equipment. So when we talk about a $200,000 purchase, and that's a great way to look at it when you put it into percentage perspective, it's not completely accurate to say something like that. We often do use the motor pool fund to kind of balance our budget in a way, in the sense that we don't pull as much, or we don't put as much into it as we should in order to prepare for these purchases. That's why when we look at the long-term forecasting specifically for this fund and for the general fund, it's important to take note of what we're purchasing now and 5 years from now, because we are trying to build up a reserve for pieces of equipment like this. And also that looming fire truck that we're looking at, that very costly looming fire truck. So while it's great to look at the way that we did Mayor Pro Tem, it's also not directly impacted as such.
Anything else? I think the only thing I would add is we're all grappling with, revenue loss and how we tackle that problem. And it is, part of our job to be looking at the items that come through. And I certainly appreciate you bringing it up. So far, it seems like we want to keep services the same. So when I see that these things are budgeted, then I think, okay, we're going to keep that the same, and we're going to try to focus on the revenue problem. Unless I hear that change in the consensus on the commission, that's what it seems like we need to do. And I guess I would just add that when we went through the strategic planning process, one of the things that came up was keeping our sidewalks clear in the winter, and this kind of machinery is what helps us do that more efficiently. So while it's a tough $170,000 pill to swallow, it's meeting one of our objectives and trying to, keep our sidewalks accessible for walking and maybe biking on the bike paths, that kind of traffic. So it's tough. I feel like all these decisions we're having to make because of the budget decisions are it's like a tug and pull. Nothing is just an easy, oh, we got the money, we're good to go, because we have to weigh the consequences on the other side. And that's good. We're doing our jobs, but I'm just kind of noting that it's tough, and it's going to be tough, until we're able to come out on the other side. So thank you. Any other discussion on this? Okay. I always forget. Do we have to make a motion to go? No, we just make a motion. Thank you. All right. Do we have a motion on this item then? Commissioner Davis.
I move that we authorize the city staff to utilize the Sourcewell purchasing program to purchase one McLean MVS tractor with attachments from Miller, Bradford, and Reappointment of Negaunee, Michigan, in the amount not to exceed $170,000.
Do we have a second? Commissioner Hill?
I second that motion.
Any additional discussion?
I think this is exactly what a city should be doing, is investing in the equipment to maintain our civic and public pathways. So yes.
Okay. Any other discussion? This is not a roll call vote. So all in favor, please say yes.
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 All opposed, please say no. Motion passes 7-0. And last on our list here for new business, we have the EDA, I'm gonna get the wording right, tourism grant application and letter of support. This was a newly added item because of crunched timeline here. City Clerk, could we have the background, please?
Thank you, Mayor. The city was recently made aware of a funding opportunity from the United States Economic Development Administration, the EDA, that would address a couple of proposed city projects that have been stalled due to a lack of funding. This grant, if awarded, will transform the city-owned Great Lakes shoreline into more of a tourism destination by creating the new Lake Superior Cultural Arts Trail along 8 miles of existing ADA-accessible waterfront hiking trail, and by improving public access with nature-based green infrastructure to stabilize and restore prioritized coastal erosion sites in degraded areas immediately adjacent to the proposed Cultural Arts Trail. Identified project partners include, but are not limited to, City of Marquette Community Development, City of Marquette Arts and Culture, Innovate Marquette Smart Zone, the Keweenaw Bay Indian Community, and the Superior Watershed Partnership. The total proposal cost is $1,167,500, with a city match of $235,000. The city CFO has advised we will be able to budget for the match in the forthcoming budget years when it would be due. The grant application packet and draft letter of support are attached. Fiscal effect, none at this time. If the grant is awarded, the city will be responsible for a match of $235,000. Recommendation, authorize the submission of the grant application and direct the execution of the letter of support. Alternatives as determined by the commission.
Thank you, City Clerk. Before I ask for a motion, I'm wondering if our city manager could just give us a little bit more,
Of a rundown?
if you don't mind.
Absolutely. So this was a grant opportunity that was brought to us just recently. And while we do have projects in mind that we would like to submit, nothing that we had currently ready or available could fit into what they were requesting until we really put our heads together and looked at how we can link this to the cultural trail that is going to be a wonderful amenity and very educational piece for tourism and for local residents. But then also looking at areas that need some work, such as our shoreline, and be able to kind of lump that into how we can improve that for tourists and also residents as well. We are working, like I said, closely with Superior Watershed Partnership. They were a very important part in this, as well as Dennis from Community Development as well. So I do want to make sure that, Dennis, I covered all of that correctly.
Yes, absolutely. And I do have just a little update that I didn't put in the agenda supplement on the funding, but we also, we're receiving a $57,000 grant from Michigan Native American Heritage Fund. Is that right? And then we also expect $8,000 from the Michigan Council for Arts and Culture. That can be used towards match, so it'll actually lower our contribution to $170,000. And I apologize, but I didn't find out that breakdown until after I hit send on this agenda supplement.
Would you mind to repeat that, please, Dennis?
Just the second one. The first one is in item B, 10B, says the 57,000, but what was the second $8,000 one?
It is the Michigan Council for Arts and Culture.
Affairs.
Yes.
Macaca.
Thank you.
MCACA.
Thank you for the added background. I know this was just one, because it was added a little later, I wanted to make sure we had a little bit of a primer. So thank you. Great information. Commissioners, do we have a motion on this item? Commissioner Stonehouse.
Your Honor, I will recommend. I will motion to authorize the submission of the grant application and direct the execution of the letter of support.
And do we have a second? Pro Tem Mayor?
Madam Mayor, I will second the motion.
Any discussion, Commissioner
I
Stonehouse?
would only point out that it's a great opportunity to do something with this funding. It's a wonderful, I think, example of how the city is able to quickly react and pivot to seize these opportunities as they arise. Thank you.
Pro Tem Mayor?
I would just say that I think it's a fantastic opportunity, and I think it's probably one of the first times I've seen an only 14% city match on a grant this size. And that I'm very glad that there is also tribal and Native American input in the process here, I guess, overall.
Other commissioners? Commissioner Hanley?
I would like to say that while I love the idea of this, even though we are getting a ton and our grant match is very low on this, we are still talking about another $170,000 that we'd have to bring out of the budget. And so for that reason, I just can't at this point say with the city and the financial standing that it is, that it's appropriate to even offer up another much of that amount.
I just want to clarify, you read that that's for a future year that would
I
be,
understand.
just making sure. Yep. Understood.
We're not going to be fixed anytime soon.
Commissioner Hill?
My question is the timeline of when the grants would be, awarded, and then when would the work actually happen? That wasn't clear from this application, which we've had little time to read.
I'm hoping that, Dennis, do you have
Yeah,
a idea of the timeline, please?
I have a general idea on that.
Thank
So the work would be, if we were awarded in the grant, we wouldn't find out until summer of 2022. We'd look at design, do the work in 2023. Everything has to be completed by 2024.
Thank you.
Other discussion? Commissioner Ponsel?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I certainly understand Commissioner Hanley's reservation about the cost of this. It is, I think, very difficult, though, for me to think about turning down a opportunity where we can get a more than $1 million investment, where the city is contributing less than 15% of the cost. I think also given, I think there's very little fat to trim left after last budget season, but $170,000 is a pretty small percentage of our general fund that we could probably find carve-outs for, rather than, I don't think it's necessarily fair to think of this as like, oh, well, now we're going to have to potentially raise $170,000 more in revenue next year. At least that's my perspective on this, because it's not $470,000, it's $170,000. I do feel that would be realistic to make that kind of adjustment in next year's budget.
Other commissioners? Commissioner Hill?
If the grant is awarded, could we make this information available on our website so that folks would understand what is going to be coming? Because there's actually quite a bit of investment on our waterfront that would come out of this. And I think it would be really valuable for folks to understand that this would, in particular, take care of some business that, in terms of some of the erosion that's happened over the years, and now that the lake has gone back, where there's actually some things maybe we want to improve on. So we'd have that opportunity for folks to see directly how this funding is being spent, to address that question of where's the money going. And I'm following on with that, but I think, if awarded, this is just us saying, yes, go forward, because there's a possibility of a commitment of funds. But then if it is awarded, I would like to make that something we could do.
Certainly.
Pro Tem Mayor?
I was just going to mention, I don't think the pages are numbered, so I can't really give anybody that, but one of the pages, it does also lay out that this project would create 50 new jobs. It's estimated it would retain 600, and that it's also estimated to have up to $10 million of private investment. I then imagine that's for the full scope of this entire project and not just specifically for us, but it seemed worth noting. What I am curious of, and I might have just missed it, is if we could get maybe some info as to why we're getting this on kind of such short notice, not even necessarily here, just like so close to the deadline, why the city in general just got it so close.
So as I mentioned, I think that there were a couple of opportunities that we were exploring on this one, and nothing that we had already planned. They were looking for shovel-ready projects, obviously. Nothing that we had planned could fit into the guidelines within here until we really started putting our heads together and got quite creative and linking everything together. I do believe that that's kind of played a part into this. It just was not something that we had something ready for this specific grant.
Thank you.
Other commissioners? I guess I would just add, Karen had sent me a text about this, if we wanted to add it. And I said, absolutely, at least tee it up and see if a commissioner would like to add it to the agenda. Because as much as we're in a revenue shortage mode, we're trying to figure things out. It's easy to and it's important to think about every purchase, but I think it's also as important to find a way to leverage every dollar we have to get more revenue, these grant opportunities, because, if we are in a difficult situation, we could have a few years where we don't have a lot of projects that our community can visibly see that we're working on. So something like this could be a really big win in a time when we may have to hold off on some other big projects. So I guess I just see that as a way to demonstrate to the community that the dollars we do have are really trying to leverage, like I've said, and work on things related to cultural interpretation, which has been important to us. Climate change or climate restoration, and talking about our natural resources. So I see this as a potential win. Fingers crossed that we would get the grant, should we apply for it. That's the other piece, right? But I think another thing that's really vivid to me is this commission is really good not just about thinking about the here and now, we're thinking down the road. And I think maybe we've had to do that because some decisions have been made in the past that then we're faced with financially. So I think it's good that we're asking the questions because maybe a future commission won't have to be as worried because we'll try to lay out a longer roadmap for them. But yeah, we've had to make a lot of tough calls, and they're not stopping anytime soon. So I certainly appreciate the feedback and the concerns, but I do plan on supporting this item here. Any other discussion before we go ahead and take a vote? All right. Oh,
Well, just to put it in context, there's $240 million available nationally. So it is, it's going to be competitive, but if we do get it, it's one of those grants that's, this is one of those things where you definitely want to apply because there's, the opportunity is there, and this is money coming out of the American Rescue Plan. So this is not money that's normally available. This is extra special money that's not in a normal federal budget, but came about out of the American Rescue Plan, which was passed 2 years ago now. So it is a unique opportunity.
okay. Anything you wanted to add, Karen? I see you.
Actually, I do, Dennis would like to add one quick
Sure.
moment. if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
I want to add a little bit to the timing thing, just to put a little bit clearer picture here that doesn't make us look like we're always scrambling for things. But we had, the city manager and Sean and I had been working on Shop House Park. And part of what we were thinking with this grant was going to be to submit for Shop House Park. But in order to do that, the Shop House Park idea needed commitment from the MEDC. And he went back and forth with them, and ultimately we didn't get any support from the state. And then they drug that out long enough that kind of put us in a bad position where we ended up being a scramble at the end here to actually try and bring some money to the community. So that's important to note, is that we were working on it, but the state support just wasn't there, and it put us in a scramble.
That
Thanks.
is helpful. Thank you, Dennis.
Didn't want to air out dirty laundry.
Understood, but it's good context to have. Commissioner Bonzel?
Yeah, just a final comment, I guess, just for clarification for the public too, like in case folks haven't heard, this cultural trail concept is something that we have been planning for years now. And I think that, at recent commission work sessions and even last year's very tight budget season, we were all in unanimous agreement that this is a project that needs to happen sometime in the near future. And I think that as we look at how can we best make use of the limited taxpayer dollars that we've been entrusted with, leveraging $170,000 to get, nearly $1 million in additional funding, I think that's clearly a really great use of taxpayer dollars. And the only way that it wouldn't be, because it will certainly save future this kind of opportunity will probably not come up again for a while. So we will be saving future commissions potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars, and saving future city taxpayers the same amount, right? And so if we are committed to doing the cultural trail really anytime in like the next decade plus, it makes sense to do it now and take advantage of this opportunity.
I hear Commissioner Stonehouse laughing only because I think this project has been on the books for maybe, a couple decades. So, yeah, let's get it done if we can. All right, let's go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, please say no. Motion passes 7-0. That brings us to our second public comment session of this meeting. If you'd like to make a public comment, please approach the podium. 3 minutes. Please clearly state your name and address unless you've already done so at this meeting. Anyone for public comment?
I think you ought to know when you do, Margaret Brum, I think you ought to know when you do ordinances for Presque, you really do need to get people's attention. Because I've been boots on the ground there for the better part of the last year, and there isn't any rule on any sign that I haven't seen broken. And I almost jumped to my feet when they were talking about prospecting on the island. That's bad enough, but I've also heard about desecration of Charlie Cabogan's grave, where people have taken knives and picks to pull out stones from that grave because they're older. So I appreciate prospecting, and I like your word, but desecration of the grave should be on the ordinance as well, because I've heard that and seen that as well. And you cannot ordinance enough on the island, because the people, first of all, the issue of service dogs is a very hot one nationwide, but there are places you can exclude a person even with a service dog for the safety of both the person and the service dog. Remember, we had a death on the island last year because a person went too close to the edge. So I'm not being rude when I say that is worthy of more investigation. But the sheer amount of garbage that I picked up on the island, cigarette butts were a part of it, plastic from fast food places, and by the way, I'm adamant, no food trucks on the island. If the fast food debris I found on the island, which is 5 miles away, can end up on the ground, just Taco Bell papers stuck to the ground, hard to pick up. Food trucks aren't going to help you. I'm also in favor of Commissioner Stonehouse's bar across the island saying if your vehicle is bigger than this, pull over here, you can't go on the island. But the fact is, the forester's report about the island indicated the severe danger of fire. And that still is out there. And if anybody wants to look at my magnificent collection of pictures of cigarette butts taken from the island, there's one thing that the city manager and I both noted when we went on 3rd Street. Nobody is extinguishing their cigarette anymore before they throw it on the ground. We were pulling up pristine cigarette butts. And this means the fire danger, which has got to be handled, even though they put out a few more fire hydrants on the way to the island, the fire danger is as bad now as it's ever been. And the people are not showing any concern about the local ordinances. I too have, Commissioner Hill said she mentioned something about a dog. I've walked up to the Hammockers and said, it's a $75 fine. I have never seen 2 young people move faster in my life than I said that. So you cannot go wrong in those ordinances around the island. Make them specific and please put some teeth in them as well. This is worth fighting to protect. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment?
I'd like to apologize for not bringing in the mask. I'm sorry. My name is Matt Lutenberger, 1406 Garfield Ave, here in the city of Marquette. I've been listening all night on YouTube, so thank you for broadcasting that. I wanted to ask if you do get this grant and you do fix the 8 miles of, I guess, multi-use trail or path. I brought in some props, and I'm sorry that they're rusty and they're old, but this was from the end of Pine Street and where the erosion was for Pine to Lakeview Arena. This is from the summer, and I have a whole bucket, and I mean a 5-gallon bucket worth of these kinds of pieces of iron. And I mean, we were able to make little statues and like castles and all that. But this is it's not washing up, it's washing out of the sand. So in a way, the erosion that we stopped at a point as a city, we stopped putting in the rocks so that we could have the walkway. This is what's coming out of the walkway. And I don't know how to go about asking who has control over that part of the lake. Is it a city thing? Because, I mean, literally, I was watching little kids play 3 feet away from this. When you walk out in the rocks looking for Uper lights, this is what looks like little sticks, but they're not. They're actual pieces of iron. And it came from whatever waste product there was that was just north of Cliff Stow. My question is, who cleans this up? How do we block it? Because it's in the sand. This is a road that we need to fix and we need to pay attention to. We just spent a bunch of money moving Lakeshore Drive. This is what's in the sand at Lakeshore Drive. Please do something before too long. And I don't know how. I don't know if we can put it into the mix of this grant proposal that you just asked for. I don't know if we have to spend millions of dollars of cleanup. I don't know if you just dump all the sand that you're picking out of the iron ore, Lake Superior, whatever that, Cliffstow, the dredging. I don't know if you can just throw a bunch of dredging stuff in there, but this is not going away until we actually dig it out of the sand. It comes out of, the erosion doesn't come from the water. It's not that water is hitting this part of the sand. This is coming out of stuff that's backed by that TV, this far away from the waterfront. So my point is, we need to think about a lot more than just what's on the shoreline for the shoreline. Please consider it. Please do whatever you have to. I know I've taken 6 months to bring it here, but there's my piece. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment? Seeing none, public comment is now closed. Brings us to comments from the commission. We'll start off with Commissioner Stonehouse.
Your Honor, I have no comments to make. It was a good and effective meeting. Much was done, and I will yield my time to my compatriots.
All right, Commissioner Bonzo.
Tonight, I'll actually do the same. I just want to thank everybody for a very productive meeting.
Commissioner Davis.
I'll follow the trend. I have no comments this evening.
Commissioner Hanley.
I'm not going to follow the trend. No, I don't have anything too big, but I do want to thank everyone that's been reaching out. I've gotten a lot of comments and emails and calls in the last week or 2 weeks. In the last week, a lot of them have been focused on the possibility of the increased property tax and a lot of ideas and what people think that we should do. And I will respond to everyone that I get with what we can do and what we're looking at. This is not the only thing the city is looking at. And I really think we need to make that clear, that right now we're looking at a lot of options for how to fix the budget. It is not just the property tax. It's just that is the one that is standing up in the top as what we can do quickly to help us get through. We want to make sure that we're having these discussions with you, because making the discussions with the public is what we need to be doing over the next months before this decision is made. We need to make sure that everyone in the city is well informed and is part of the decision-making process for this. And I think that that's something that each of the commissioners are responsible for doing, along with city staff. And I want to make sure that we're held accountable to that, because at this point, the misinformation is causing a lot of panic, I think. And we want to make sure that we're out there and telling people exactly what's actually happening, and that they can come to us and they can ask us, and we would all be happy to explain everything that we know at this point. But that is the point that I wanted to make. Thank you.
Pro Tem Mayor.
Thank you. I'm actually going to talk about something pretty much very similar to Commissioner Hanley. I made a post on Wednesday on Facebook and shared it at some of the Marquette social media pages regarding our Monday night's discussion. And overwhelmingly, the feedback I received was very positive, understanding, please keep us updated. And I'd say probably half of the people that were commenting on the posts or were messaging me were offering ideas. Now, granted, almost every single idea the state of Michigan does not allow us to do, but it was just the fact that residents were so willing to try offering up ideas and solutions. I just loved it. And I want to end with that by giving a shout out to that man that just drove down to City Hall probably, watching this meeting at home just so he could give public comment. That's a phenomenal display of public engagement. Thank you.
Commissioner Hill.
Yeah, welcome back, welcome back, Matt Lutenberger, who actually works at Mining Journal and runs up the hill, is at least what he used to do. So welcome back, Matt. It was great to see you in here. Maybe we should have masks at the table for folks to come in, but I'll drop a mask off for you at the Mining Journal. Well said, Commissioner Hanley, and about the questions that we have in front of us. And I think the only thing I'm going to add to that is, which I think Mayor Pro Tem Mayor was getting to, is local government is the last stop, right? The buck gets passed, and the federal government, the state government, we're it. We're the ones who are picking up the snow and buying tractors to pick up the snow, and we're the ones who are going to pull that metal out of the beach so that our beaches are safe. We are the last line, and so the services that we provide really are about quality of life and how we live here on this magnificent lake. And so the question of how to pay for that and how to make sure that we're getting the money that we're due from, say, a federal grant or state funding that's currently sitting. There's billions of dollars sitting right now in Lansing that they're holding on to and not allocating down to us that could be helping address these issues. So I expect a lot of good conversation and a lot of engagement with the public going forward. Thank you.
Good comments, or lack thereof. And, well, now we're laughing. I just have to say that a comment was made earlier about the fact that donuts really aren't good for deer and we shouldn't give them to them. And I thought people shouldn't give me donuts either. But anyway. Okay, my one comment I wanted to make was I met late last week with the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services Director. Her name is Elizabeth Hertel, Director Hertel. It was a brief meeting. She was here in Marquette in person, and I was able to talk with her about what's going on with COVID in the state. And the wave is on the downward trend. At the time I talked with her, she said Marquette County was a little bit behind the statewide trend, but downward it goes, and hoping that that's positive, a little more positive moving forward here. She did say a big initiative for her office and this year will be mental health services, particularly for children. So she said to watch for some more efforts in that area and making sure that those services are fair and more easily accessible to all. So just wanted to provide that update. I think we've had a lot of really great discussion here tonight. We have moved forward on a lot of city projects. Thank you to city staff for teeing up all of these items for us, including the work session we had just prior to this on the 3rd Street DDA TIF, which is the Downtown Development Authority tax increment financing. We just got a primer on a potential for that. So more information to come on that as well. I think that's all I have. I'm wondering if our city manager could potentially address Matt Loomberger's question about the iron rods in the beach, or if we can have city staff look into that.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Yes, we can certainly look at that site once the weather has turned for the spring. But we were aware of this issue last year. We did have Superior Watershed Partnership do some work over there and clean up quite a bit. There is a little bit of a border between us and NMU's beach, so we do have to be cognizant of where we are doing the cleanup efforts. However, I believe they are also aware of the issue in this area. So we will keep a close eye on that, but we did do quite a bit of work, or SWP did quite a bit of work down there this past summer. So one other thing I wanted to mention is community office hours with the city manager will be held at the Peter White Public Library on February 9th at 10 a.m. And that is all I have. Thank you.
I have one quick question. We have a work session next Monday, correct? The 7th? Special meeting. And then we do not have a meeting on the 10th, correct? At one point, the 10th was being thrown around as an idea for a meeting.
There is no meeting on the 10th.
Okay, just wanted to clarify for the commission.
The 7th is still tentative. There's a possibility that will change based off of some timeline. That information should be shared within the next 24 hours.
Thank you. I just wanted to kind of let the public know and also the commission. All right, well, we will stay tuned on that. We are adjourned at 8:09 p.m. Thanks.